Good morning, everyone. It's Katrina from the Alluring Bead Boutique. And today I want to talk to you for a couple of minutes about a different type of beading thread. In most of my videos and tutorials, I have used a lot of Fireline and Wildfire beading threads, which these are a coated type of thread that is originally designed for fishing. But they have developed some, forms for specifically made for beaders. Berkeley makes Fireline, and I prefer to use Fireline as opposed to Wildfire. I have better luck with it. I don't split the thread. It doesn't, the coating doesn't come off of the black satin as easily. And if you're using beads that have extremely sharp edges, a lot of times it's better to use these. But I also have a lot of these nylon beading threads. I have some Nymo size, these are the size B mix here, which is smaller. And this is some S-Lon, which is in a size D, I believe. And this is actually a thicker thread. But I don't use these often in my videos, but I'm going to be using them, and I've been using them actually for a couple of projects that I'm working on. I've been working on playing around with these peyote triangles, and I've been using the nylon thread in these projects. So I thought I'd do a quick little tutorial about how to get started with using these nylon threads. So this is a brown Nymo, and I'm going to show you guys how it comes off the spool. So when you unwind this thread, you can see how curly it is, for one thing. And something I learned from a video class that I actually paid for, which is a shaped peyote class on Blueprint. If you are left-handed, when you unspool this thread, you want to use the end that you cut off closest to the bobbin to thread through the needle. If you are a right-handed person, you should use the end farthest away from the bobbin to thread through the needle once you condition and stretch the thread. So let's go ahead and take a little bit off. I'm not going to take too much off, just about a wingspan. So you can't really see me do that, but a wingspan is when you outstretch your arms as far to the right and left as you can stretch them, and then from fingertip to fingertip is what is known as a wingspan. All right, so I've got a wingspan of my thread unwound. So now I'm going to cut it just right off the spool. And now I'm going to stretch the thread. You can stretch it while you're pulling it off the spool, or you can stretch it afterwards. So basically, you're just holding it tight with your thumb and forefinger as you pull the thread through, and just let it slide through your fingers. And this will stretch some of the kink out of it. So just keep doing that a couple of times to stretch your thread out. Pre-stretching is a good thing. You don't want your thread stretching once you've beaded your, your little bit heavier glass beads onto it. So now as for threading the needle, it's kind of difficult to thread this thread through your needle. And then it's also a little bit difficult to work with unless you condition it. And I have some microcrystalline wax. And what I did with it was I stuck it inside of this little case that you can get like at Walmart or whatever that comes with beeswax in it. I don't like using the beeswax because it clogs the bead holes, and it's a lot messier to work with. So what I do is to remember which end of the thread I cut from the closest to the bobbin, because I'm left-handed. I want to thread this end through my needle. I start with this end, and I just take a little piece of it, and I go ahead and condition this end by passing it through the wax a couple of times. Then I'm going to flip it over. Excuse me, I've got our allergens are getting really bad here now because we got a lot of trees budding. So then I'm just going to pull the whole thread through. And I'm only going to do this a couple of times because basically you don't want too much of a wax buildup on the thread. It makes it really difficult to work with, and it also can clog the bead holes, but not as bad as beeswax. Then you just simply take the thread through your fingers, hold it here, and then just pull the whole thread back through your fingers. And that removes any excess wax that you might have gotten onto your thread. So now that I've kept up with which end I want to thread through my needle, I'm going to lay it down here. You can see the wax will make it stick to your fingers just a little bit. And then you're just going to simply thread onto your needle. Now, if you've been using this wax thread, you may notice that it's really hard to get it through your needle. It does help to flatten it a little bit with your pliers, because thread is round and beading needles' eyes are flat and oval. So if you flatten it just gently, sometimes that makes it easier to get through the beading needle. If your needle hole gets clogged with wax, then that's a different story. So these are probably clogged with wax because I've been using these two needles right here. Let me see if I can get it through the other one. And if I can find it. So basically both of these needles are pretty much clogged with wax. So what I do is I take my thinnest, pointiest sewing pin, and then I just try to clean the holes out with the point of that pin pushing the wax through on the other side. Then I come over to the other side and I do the same thing and try to bring the wax downwards. And this unclogs the the eye of your needle. And usually then you can thread the your nylon thread through with a little bit more ease. If your needle becomes difficult to flip around in your fingers like this, it's usually because it's quite bent. And beading needles are really thin and they bend pretty easily, so I usually just keep a little pair of pliers handy. And I don't try to unbend the needle. What I do is I just grasp the needle firmly and try to straighten the needle just by wiggling it like that. And that usually will get the desired result to where you can flip the eye of your needle from one way to the other way. These are just a cute few little hacks that you can use when you are first learning to do beading or bead weaving. And you can see that because I poked that with the pin, I freed up that eye hole. So now I can pass my thread through with no problem. But when I unthread this needle, it's going to be the same thing. There's going to be wax buildup. And that's just a couple of quick little hacks for you on how you can use these nylon beading threads and make your life much easier when you're trying to use them. You do not want to wax the thread once it's on the needle, because the strength of you pulling on that thread, as the thread rubs up against the inside of that needle eye, it's going to damage that thread and weaken it a lot. So don't do that. Do all of your conditioning and stretching prior to threading the thread onto your beading needle. And here's just a little Ziploc baggie that I use to keep all of my needles and threading tools in one spot. Here's some silk purl knotting thread. Here is the bag of microcrystalline wax, and there's the beeswax that I took out of this thing that I got at Walmart. I suggest you get you some of this microcrystalline wax. It's really good for a lot of things. And I keep a few other things like crimp covers and crimps, all my beading needles. And I just organize everything into smaller. This is some plastic thread bobbins that I got over. These are from Dairies. They come in handy. So if you have a pretty decent sized lengths of your, whether it's fireline, nylon thread, whatever it is, you can use these little thread bobbins to store pieces of thread that you're not willing to throw away. And just a couple of, there's some more and some paper ones. It's already got a few little threads on there, you can see, and that helps you to preserve your threads and not waste so much. And then also, this is like a little beading tube I got. It was actually quite long and it had broken at the top. So basically what I did was I cut it off and I put the lid back on it, and I use it to keep my beading needle sizes sorted out here. So that's just a cool little trick. And I also keep my nylon threads in here, so because they come in these nice little tubes. you can just slide them right down into this quart-sized freezer bag, and there is all of my nylon bead weaving supplies right in one little bag that I keep handy over here in my desk drawer. Alright guys, so that is it for this short little thread tutorial. Hope you find something useful to help you with your bead weaving and help you to discover the ability to use these beautiful colored threads in your work. You know, a lot of times the very limited amount of colors that you're available to purchase these particular threads in can become cumbersome when you're working with translucent beads and you're working on projects where you have a seam line and it becomes very visible. All right, folks, thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and stay tuned for more.